Hello and welcome. Tonight, we leave the busy world behind. We set aside our worries and our endless lists of things to do, and we travel back in time. Back to a world of dappled sunlight on Tuscan hills, of bustling Florentine workshops, and of quiet, candlelit rooms where a single mind was changing the course of human history. Tonight, we invite you to close your eyes and drift into the world of a man who is more than just an artist, more than an inventor, more than a scientist. He was all of these things and more. Tonight, we tell the story of Leonardo from the small town of Vinci. Let your breathing slow, let your brain feel heavy and relaxed as we begin our journey. Our story starts on a spring day, April 15th, in the year 1452. In the rolling hills of Tuscany, in a small town called Vinci, a boy was born. His name was Leonardo. He was the son of a respected notary named Sieur Pierrot and a young peasant woman named Caterina. In the eyes of society, his birth was illegitimate, a detail that would follow him throughout his life, barring him from the university education that sons of notaries would typically receive. But a mind like Leonardo's could not be contained by social convention. Perhaps it was this very exclusion that set him free. Unburdened by the rigid curriculum of the time, his classroom became the world around him. His teachers were the birds in the sky, the rivers that carved the valleys, the flowers that opened in the sun, and the anatomy of the human face. He spent his childhood exploring the countryside around Vinci. He was known for his striking good looks, his physical strength, and a charm that drew people to him. But more than that, he was known for his boundless curiosity. He would watch lizards sunning themselves on a rock for hours. He would study the patterns of water flowing in a stream. He would collect bats and crickets and snakes, observing them with an intensity that was unusual for a young boy. He was not just looking, he was seeing. He was deconstructing the world in his mind, trying to understand the great machine of nature. His father, Sieur Pierrot, recognized his son's extraordinary artistic talent early on. He saw the intricate drawings Leonardo made of plants and animals. Legend tells us that a local peasant asked Sieur Pierrot to have a shield painted for him. Sieur Pierrot gave the task to Leonardo. Instead of a traditional design, Leonardo, inspired by the myth of Medusa, gathered a collection of strange creatures from the field's lizards, newts, and insect sand from them. He composed a terrifying, fire-breathing monster. His creation was so lifelike and so horrifying that his father was startled when he first saw it. He bought a different shield for the peasant and sold Leonardo's monstrous creation to an art dealer in Florence for a handsome sum. It was clear to Sieur Pierrot that his son's future did not lie in the small town of Vinci. It lay in the bustling heart of the Renaissance, the city of Florence. And so, around the age of 14, Leonardo was taken from the quiet hills of his childhood and brought to the workshop of one of the city's finest artists, Andrea del Verrocchio. This was the beginning of his true education. The workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio was one of the most prestigious in all of Florence. Verrocchio was a master sculptor, a goldsmith, and a painter. To be his apprentice was to be at the center of artistic innovation. But it was not a glamorous life. It was a life of hard work and discipline. Leonardo would have started with the most menial of tasks, sweeping the floors, grinding pigments to make paint, preparing wooden panels with layers of gesso. These tasks were designed to teach patience and an intimate understanding of the materials of art. He learned chemistry by mixing minerals and oils to create colors. He learned engineering by assisting Verrocchio with the casting of enormous bronze sculptures. He learned architecture, metalworking, and leather crafts. The workshop was a laboratory of creativity, and for a mind as curious as Leonardo's, it was paradise. He quickly outgrew the basic tasks. Verrocchio recognized his apprentice's talent and began to give him more responsibility. Leonardo's hand can be seen in many of Verrocchio's works from this period. The most famous example is the painting The Baptism of Christ. Verrocchio painted the main figures, but he assigned Leonardo the task of painting one of the angels in the distant landscape in the background. When Leonardo was finished, his contribution so far surpassed his master's in its grace and lifelike quality that the story goes, Verrocchio was humbled. The angel's face was soft. Its curls were rendered with a delicate, smoky quality, and its gaze was full of a gentle, divine light. It was a glimpse of the revolutionary artist Leonardo was about to become. According to the art historian Vasari, Verrocchio was so astonished by his pupil's genius that he resolved never to touch a paintbrush again. While this story may be an exaggeration, it speaks to the truth of Leonardo's emerging power. He was not just copying the techniques of his master, he was innovating. He developed the technique of sfumato Italian for vanished or smoked, where he created soft, hazy transitions between colors and tones, eliminating harsh outlines. It's what gives his paintings their dreamlike atmospheric quality. By 1472, at the age of 20, Leonardo was qualified as a master in the Guild of St. Luke, the Guild of Artists and Doctors of Medicine. He could now open his own workshop. But he chose to remain with Verrocchio for several more years, continuing to collaborate and refine his skills. His mind was now overflowing with ideas, not just for paintings, but for machines, for architecture, for understanding the very fabric of the world. Florence had given him his craft, but it was becoming too small for his ambitions. His gaze was turning northward to the powerful city of Milan, where he hoped to find a patron who could match the scale of his dreams. In 1482, at the age of 30, Leonardo left Florence for Milan. He presented himself to the ruler of the city, Ludovico Sforza, not primarily as a painter, but as a military engineer. He wrote a remarkable letter to the Duke, a kind of job application in which he listed his capabilities. He spoke of designing lightweight bridges, of cannons, of armored vehicles, the precursor to the modern tank cannon, of ways to divert rivers. Only at the very end of the long list of his engineering talents did he add, almost as an afterthought, likewise in painting, I can do everything possible. Ludovico was intrigued. He hired Leonardo, not for his military machines, but as a master of all arts. For nearly 2 decades, Leonardo served the Sforza court. He was a painter, yes, but he was also a court musician, a designer of elaborate festivals and stage plays, an architect, and an engineer. One of his first major commissions was not a painting, but a sculpture. It's an enormous bronze horse, a monument to Ludovico's father. It was a project of immense scale, a horse that would stand over 23 feet tall. For years, Leonardo studied the anatomy of horses, filling notebooks with detailed sketches of their muscles and movements. He built a massive clay model of the horse, a masterpiece that filled all who saw it with wonder. The next step was to cast it in bronze. But war was brewing. The bronze that was meant for the horse was melted down to make cannons to defend the city. The great horse was never cast. When French forces invaded Milan in 1499, Thachus used Leonardo's magnificent clay model for target practice, shattering it into pieces. It was a heartbreaking loss, one of many of Leonardo's grand projects that would remain unfinished. But his time in Milan also produced one of the most famous paintings in all of human history. On the wall of the dining hall in the monastery of Santa Maria del Grazie, Ludovico commissioned Leonardo to paint the Last Supper instead of using the traditional, durable fresco technique, which required painting quickly on wet plaster. Leonardo experimented. He wanted to be able to work slowly to capture the psychological depth of the moment. So he painted with tempera on a dry wall sealed with gesso. It was an innovation that allowed him to create a work of breathtaking detail and emotional complexity. He depicted the exact moment after Christ had said, "One of you will betray me." He captured a wave of emotion that ripples through the apostles. There is shock, denial, anger, grief. Each apostle is an individual, a study in human psychology. At the center, Christ is a figure of serene, divine acceptance. It was unlike any depiction of the scene that had come before it. Tragically, Leonardo's experimental technique was a failure. The paint began to flake from the wall even before he had finished it. The masterpiece began to decay almost as soon as it was born. But its power was so immense that it has been lovingly and repeatedly restored over the centuries. A fragile ghost of a painting that still holds the world in its thrall. During these years in Milan, Leonardo's most private and perhaps most important work was taking place in the quiet of his studio. It was the work of his notebooks. Throughout his life, Leonardo carried a notebook with him, tucked into his belt. In these books, he recorded everything. Tens of thousands of pages of drawings, ideas, observations, and musings. He wrote in a peculiar mirror script, from right to left, perhaps to keep his ideas private, or perhaps simply because it was more comfortable for him as a left-handed writer. These notebooks are the true window into his mind. They reveal a curiosity that was utterly insatiable. There are designs for flying machines based on his meticulous studies of the flight of a bat. There are sketches of helicopters, parachutes, and diving suits, centuries before they would become a reality. There are intricate anatomical drawings of the human body, based on his dissections of human corpses, a practice that was both dangerous and forbidden at the time. He drew the heart, the muscles, the bones, and a famous drawing of a fetus in the womb, all with stunning accuracy. He studied geology, botany, optics, and hydraulics. He understood that the earth was far older than the Bible suggested. He understood how fossils were formed. He was a man who lived in the 15th century, but whose mind often seemed to reside in the 19th or 20th. These notebooks were his private conversation with nature, his relentless quest to understand everything. For him, art and science were not separate disciplines. They were two sides of the same coin. Both were ways of observing and recording the beauty and the mechanics of the world. The eye, he wrote, was the window to the soul and the most important tool for both the artist and the scientist. After the French invasion, Leonardo left Milan. He traveled through Italy for several years, working for a time as a military engineer for the infamous Cesare Borgia, before eventually returning to the city of his youth, Florence. But Florence had changed. A new star had risen in the art world, a young, tempestuous sculptor named Michelangelo. A fierce rivalry grew between the two great artists. Leonardo was now in his 50s, an elegant, established master. Michelangelo was in his 20s, brilliant and arrogant. They were commissioned to paint two massive battle scenes on opposite walls of the Palazzo Vecchio, the city's town hall. It was to be a direct competition, a battle of the masters. Both began their work, but, like so many of Leonardo's projects, neither painting was ever completed. It was during this second Florentine period, however, that Leonardo painted the work that would define his legacy. A portrait of a Florentine merchant's wife, Lisa del Gioconda. We know her today as the Mona Lisa. What can be said about this painting that has not been said before? For over 500 years, she has captivated us. Leonardo kept this painting with him for the rest of his life, always working on it, always refining it. It was never delivered to the client who commissioned it. It was his. He used his sfumato technique to perfection. The corners of her eyes and mouth are veiled in a soft shadow, making her expression ambiguous, ever-changing. Is she smiling? Is she sad? Her gaze seems to follow you around the room. Behind her, the landscape is a strange, dreamlike place that seems to be from another world. The painting feels less like a portrait of a person and more like a portrait of a mystery. It is the culmination of everything Leonardo knew about optics, about human anatomy, and about the human soul. As Leonardo grew older, his artistic commissions became fewer. His fame was immense, but his reputation for being an unreliable perfectionist, for leaving projects unfinished, preceded him. He spent 2 years in Rome under the patronage of the Pope, but it was a frustrating time. Here, his rival Michelangelo was painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, while Leonardo was given minor projects and felt sidelined. His true solace remained his notebooks, his scientific studies. But a new and final chapter of his life was about to begin. King Francis I of France, a great admirer of Italian art, invited Leonardo to come and live in France. He offered him the title of first painter, engineer, and architect to the king, and gave him a beautiful manor house, the Chateau du Clos, connected to the king's own residence by an underground tunnel. The king did not give Leonardo any specific commissions. He did not ask for paintings or sculptures. He simply wanted the honor of Leonardo's presence at his court. He wanted the pleasure of talking with him every day. It was here, in France, that Leonardo found a peaceful home for his final years. He spent his time organizing his vast collection of notebooks and conversing with the young king who so admired him. On May 2nd, 1519, at the age of 67, Leonardo da Vinci died, cradled, as legend has it, in the arms of the King of France. He left his paintings and his thousands of pages of notes to his loyal student, Francesco Melzi. What is the legacy of a man like Leonardo? It is not just in a handful of paintings that survive. It is not just in the designs for machines that were never built. His true legacy is one of human potential. He showed us that one person can be both an artist and a scientist, that a mind can be both creative and analytical. He taught us that curiosity is a powerful engine, that to truly see the world is the first step to understanding it. His life was a quiet, relentless pursuit of knowledge. He was driven not by a quest for fame or fortune, but by a deep, abiding need to know, to understand how a bird flies, to understand how a river flows, to understand the secret of a human smile. And so, as we settle into our rest tonight, you can think of Leonardo in his study, the candlelight flickering on his face, a pen in his hand, a notebook open before him, sketching the world, understanding the world, and dreaming of worlds yet to come. Let his boundless curiosity inspire in you a sense of wonder, and let the soft, smoky haze of his paintings, his sfumato, be a gentle fog that eases you now into a deep and peaceful sleep. Rest well.